As Australia battles devastating wildfires, climate change is fueling another major concern that South Florida can relate to.
That's a massive loss of corals. Warming waters are being blamed for the loss of an estimated half of the corals along the Great Barrier Reef.
Meteorologist Angie Lastman is live in Melbourne, Australia, investigating the lessons that South Florida can learn from this timely subject. And Angie, I guess it's good afternoon over there of Tuesday, right?
Yes, I am coming to you from the future, guys. It is Tuesday afternoon here, 3 p.m. And we actually got to Melbourne early this morning. We flew from Sydney here, and since we arrived, we've been basically visiting all the universities, trying to talk to some of the leading experts in their fields with relation to climate change. The first stop that we had was at the University of Melbourne, where we talked to one of the foremost professors that deals with climate change adaptation for coral reefs. She gave us a rundown of the Great Barrier Reef and some of the lessons that we in South Florida could take home and learn to help us save our reef.
The health of the Great Barrier Reef is actually not so good. In 2016 and 2017 we had very severe heat waves, so back-to-back heat waves in those 2 years. And over the course of the 2 years, we lost about half of all the coral present on the Great Barrier Reef. So those corals bleached and died during the heat wave. Ultimately, we have to do something about climate change, climate warming, because if we don't address that in the long term, the reef will continue to decline.
Tell me some of the lessons that you've learned in your research of how we can help combat what's going on with warming waters and the risk that the corals are currently facing.
Yeah, so in my research, in my group, we are trying to develop methods to improve basically heat tolerance of corals. For instance, we're trying to develop a bacterial probiotic to see if we can increase coral heat tolerance by manipulating the bacteria that associate with corals.
What does the future look like for corals if we do absolutely nothing as far as climate action goes?
Yeah, if we do nothing about climate, then the future of coral reefs is very dire, very grim. Yeah, I don't think we will have much coral reef left by the end of the century if we don't do anything. Curbing climate warming is critically important to try and save coral reefs. If we don't achieve that, there's very little hope for coral reefs.
And guys, a lot of the debate when it comes to climate change action leads back to the economy. What do we do? How does it affect our economy, especially when we're talking about limiting fossil fuels? Now, what's interesting is, much like Florida, Australia's economy, a lot of it depends on tourism and specifically the Great Barrier Reef, so a lot like South Florida's reefs. An estimated $4.9 billion yearly comes in from the Great Barrier Reef for Australia's economy, so it is a very important factor for them. For now, I'll send it back over to you guys in the studio.
Angie, we have a quick question, because she was mentioning something about probiotics for the coral reefs there. So is there any optimism at all that the Great Barrier Reef can be saved and even restored?
Yeah, and Professor Van Oppen was very hopeful with this. She says that this is something that is great. We definitely can try and help this, but at the end of the day, we also need some climate action, and we need to be limiting those fossil fuels. So again, the conversation is on the table. What do we do in the United States? What do they do in Australia? And we basically start that conversation all over again. But definitely, she is optimistic about her research moving forward.
All right, meteorologist Angie Lastman live from Melbourne, Australia. Angie, thank you.
The